picture this. You're 22 years old. Nobody drafted you. Not a single team in the entire National Football League thought you were worth spending a pick on. And yet, less than 4 months later, you're standing on an NFL practice field, having just watched the front office release the veteran kicker who was supposed to have your job locked down. A guy who kicked in a literal Super Bowl. That's not a movie script, folks. That is exactly what just happened in Ashburn, Virginia. And the young man at the center of this whirlwind has a story so wild, so unexpectedly emotional, that even the most jaded NFL fan is going to feel something by the end of this. Buckle up, because we are diving deep into the meteoric rise of Washington Commanders rookie kicker Drew Stevens, the undrafted free agent who just did the unthinkable, and the surprisingly touching drama that unfolded behind the scenes as he did it. Let's rewind the clock and set the stage, because context is everything here. When the Commanders opened training camp this past July, the kicking job was supposed to belong to Jake Moody. This is a man who was a third-round draft pick back in 2023, a guy who kicked for the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl LV on the biggest stage the sport has to offer. He came over to Washington last season, stabilized a position that had been an absolute carousel of chaos for years, and by all accounts looked like exactly the steady veteran presence the Commanders desperately needed after burning through kicker after kicker after kicker. Moody resigned with Washington this offseason. On paper, this looked like a formality. A guy with playoff pedigree walking into a job that was basically already his. Then Washington did something that shocked absolutely nobody who understands how ruthless professional sports really are. They brought in competition anyway. Enter Drew Stevens, an undrafted rookie fresh out of Iowa, a kid who wasn't even guaranteed an invite to Commanders camp until other teams started sniffing around him and Washington scrambled to lock him up before somebody else did. And from the moment camp opened, this quiet Iowa kid with a cannon for a leg started doing something nobody expected. He didn't just compete with Jake Moody. He started matching him kick for kick. Then he started beating him. The numbers tell an absolutely brutal story if you're Team Moody. Early in camp, it was neck and neck, practically a coin flip between the two. But as the weeks dragged on, something shifted. Moody's accuracy started evaporating in real time. There were sessions where he was missing field goals from the mid-40s and beyond. One particularly ugly stretch where he clanked 4 attempts in a row. By the time the dust settled, Stevens was converting right around 90% of his kicks in camp, while Moody had slipped all the way down into the mid-70s. And then came the preseason opener against the Miami Dolphins, the moment that basically wrote the ending of this story in permanent marker. Stevens calmly drilled a 41-yard field goal like it was nothing. Moody, meanwhile, hit the right upright on a routine 29-yard attempt, and the ball limped through more out of mercy than precision. And just like that, on a random Monday in the middle of August, the Commanders pulled the trigger. Jake Moody, Super Bowl kicker, third-round pick. The guy who was supposed to have this job locked up was released. Just like that. Gone. And an undrafted kid from Iowa who wasn't even on an NFL roster 4 months earlier was suddenly, officially, the guy Washington was trusting to win football games with his right foot. Now here's where the story stops being just another roster transaction buried in a press release and becomes something you actually want to sit down and listen to. Because when reporters got Stevens in front of a microphone to talk about this whole surreal experience, he did not give the usual robotic athlete non-answers. He got real. He got human. And what he revealed about the days leading up to this decision, and the character of the man he beat out for the job, is honestly one of the more heartwarming things you'll hear out of an NFL locker room this summer. First, let's talk about how he even found out. This wasn't some dramatic call to the head coach's office or a tap on the shoulder after practice. Stevens revealed that it was Washington's special teams coordinator, Larry Izzo, who rang him up on the phone the day before to deliver the news personally. And get this, Stevens admitted he was completely blindsided by the timing. He fully expected this competition to play out through all 3 preseason games before any decision got made. Instead, it got settled early, decisively, no drama, no lingering suspense. When asked if he was surprised the front office moved this fast, Stevens didn't hide his genuine confusion, saying he honestly didn't understand why they wouldn't just let the battle play out over the full preseason slate. But then, showing wisdom beyond his years, he immediately caught himself and added that ultimately, that decision simply isn't his to make. He's not an Ashburn to worry about roster moves and front office strategy. He's there to kick footballs, and that's exactly where his focus is staying. But here's the moment in this whole saga that is going to stick with you. When reporters asked Stevens about his relationship with Jake Moody, the veteran he had just unceremoniously replaced, instead of giving some diplomatic, vanilla answer designed to avoid controversy, Stevens did something remarkable. He stopped, and he insisted on using his platform to specifically praise the man whose job security he had just destroyed. Think about what that competition actually looked like from the inside for a second. Jake Moody had every single reason in the world to treat Drew Stevens like an enemy combatant. This was a zero-sum battle for one roster spot, one paycheck, one career trajectory. Moody could have frozen him out completely. He could have kept his training secrets to himself, refused to share a single piece of wisdom, made Stevens' rookie transition into the league as miserable and isolating as possible. Nobody would have blamed him for it. That's just cutthroat professional sports. Instead, according to Stevens, Moody did the exact opposite. He revealed that throughout the entire competition, he followed Moody's lead more closely than literally anyone else in the entire building, mimicking his lifting routines, joining him for extra work at specific times during the day, essentially treating the veteran as an unofficial mentor, even while the two of them were locked in a battle for the exact same job. Stevens didn't hold back with the praise, calling Moody a genuinely great guy who simply didn't have to be that generous, and yet chose to be anyway. And then came the detail that turns this whole story from interesting roster battle into something genuinely moving. Stevens revealed that roughly 2 hours after he found out he had won the job, meaning roughly 2 hours after Moody found out he had just lost his, Moody still reached out to him directly. He sent a text message wishing Stevens good luck and telling him he was available if Stevens ever needed anything at all. Sit with that for a second. A man who just got unceremoniously cut from an NFL roster, whose career just took a gut punch of a hit, took the time within hours of that devastating news to comfort and support the 22-year-old kid who took his job. Stevens didn't shy away from acknowledging how rare that kind of grace actually is in a business this cutthroat, pointing out that plenty of other players in that exact situation would have simply gone silent. He called it a massive character statement, and honestly, it's hard to argue with him. But Moody wasn't the only veteran shaping Stevens' whirlwind rookie transition. Let's talk about the two men who are now Stevens' actual battery mates on every single kick he attempts: punter and holder Tress Way and long snapper Tyler Ott. And this is where the story gets almost comically intense in the best possible way. Stevens revealed something that should make every Commanders fan feel a whole lot better about the special teams unit heading into the regular season: the sheer, borderline obsessive precision these two veterans operate with. He explained that Tress Way, at 36 years old, treats every single snap and every single hold like it's being measured against an invisible clock. Literally, Way references hold placement using clock positions, where 12 o'clock means the laces are pointed perfectly at the uprights. Stevens described a moment early on where Ott snapped him a ball that came in slightly off, landing somewhere around 10 or 9 o'clock on that imaginary clock face, and Way was visibly frustrated by what most people would consider an imperceptible margin of error. Stevens, being the gracious rookie that he is, tried to wave it off as totally fine, but Way wasn't having it. That's the standard. That's simply the level these two operate at. And here's a stat that should make you do a double take. Stevens casually mentioned that the difference in age between himself and Way is actually smaller than the gap between Stevens and his own father. Let that sink in. This kid is out here lining up kicks with a man old enough to give him actual paternal advice, and he's soaking up every single ounce of wisdom he can get. Stevens openly admitted he loves picking the brains of veterans who have been grinding at an elite level for over a decade, because you genuinely never know which random piece of advice ends up transforming your entire career. Perhaps the most fascinating window into Stevens' rookie mind, though, came when he started talking about the actual mental transition from college kicking to the NFL. This wasn't some cocky rookie bragging about his talent, it was surprisingly introspective. He talked about how the biggest adjustment wasn't physical at all, it was mental. He revealed that even though he considered himself to have one of the best operations in all of college football during his time at Iowa, stepping into Washington's operation with Way and Ott felt like a completely different universe, night and day, in his own words. He joked that when he's out there hitting rock-solid, confident kicks during warm-ups, coaches on the sideline barely react anymore, treating a booming, accurate strike from 30-plus yards out like it's just an ordinary drill, kicking off sticks, as he put it, meaning it's become so routine and expected that nobody even blinks. But the single most compelling thing Stevens said, the quote that should genuinely excite Commanders fans nervous about trusting their season to an undrafted rookie, was about conviction. Stevens laid out in stunningly clear terms exactly what separates good NFL kickers from great ones, and it has almost nothing to do with leg strength. He pointed out that plenty of kickers in this league are physically capable of drilling a football dead straight down the middle every single time in practice. So if the physical talent is basically universal at this level, where does the disconnect actually happen? According to Stevens, it's entirely mental. He described a scenario every kicker dreads, standing over a field goal attempt in gusting, inconsistent wind, unsure whether to play it left, right, or straight down the pipe, and explained that the worst possible thing you can do in that moment is hesitate, second-guess yourself. Sit there paralyzed by indecision. His philosophy is brutally simple: pick a plan, commit to it fully, and accept the outcome, whatever it is, as long as you trusted your read and executed with total conviction. That is not the mindset of some wide-eyed rookie who got lucky in camp. That is the mindset of a kicker who genuinely believes he belongs on that field. So where does this leave the Washington Commanders as they barrel toward the regular season? They just handed the single most pressure-packed, faith-tested position on the entire roster to a 22-year-old who wasn't drafted, who has zero regular season NFL experience, and who is now the guy potentially deciding overtime games and division rivalries with his right foot. That should be terrifying. And yet, everything about how this kid carries himself, his humility toward the veteran he replaced, his hunger to learn from the grizzled specialists around him, his ice-cold conviction under pressure, suggests the Commanders might have stumbled into one of the best undrafted finds in franchise special teams history. Meanwhile, Jake Moody is out there right now, somewhere in the league, searching for his next opportunity, carrying with him the reputation of a man who lost his job but never once lost his class. And honestly, in a league that chews up and spits out players without a second thought, that might be the most impressive stat line of this entire story. Keep your eyes on Ashburn this season, because every single time that Commanders offense stalls out in the red zone, every single time a game comes down to a fourth-quarter field goal with the season on the line, it's going to be this undrafted rookie's leg deciding the outcome. And based on everything we just heard from him, he sounds more than ready for the moment. If this story hit you right in the feels the way it hit us, do not scroll past without smashing that like button. It genuinely makes a massive difference for this channel. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of Drew Stevens taking over as the guy, because I want to hear your predictions for this season. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we've got so much more Commanders coverage coming your way and you do not want to miss a single second of it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next